Let's get started. Welcome to Arts and Change, hosted by the University of Rochester's Institute for the Performing Arts in partnership with the Office of Equity and Inclusion, the Paul J. Burgett Intercultural Center, 540 West Main Inc., Create a Space Now, Eastman Institute for Music Leadership, and the Rochester Fringe Festival. My name is Jessica Guzman Ray. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm your conference host for this session with Hannah Bell. We would like to acknowledge with respect the Seneca Nation, known as the Great Hill People and keepers of the western door of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. We take this opportunity to thank the original caretakers on whose ancestral lands the University of Rochester currently resides here in Rochester, New York. As we come together, we want to acknowledge the need for a commitment to constant action and attention surrounding the systematic issues that continue to impact each of us to this day. The presenter has shared that sensitive content in today's session will include discussion of maternal death and racism. In order to enable live transcription in your Zoom room, please click on the arrow to the right of the live transcript box to view. That box can be dragged to another location on your screen. We're recording today's sessions, so please note your spoken, written comments, and image may be included as well as a transcription. In order to protect your privacy, we invite you to rename your Zoom profile with your first name only and your pronouns if you feel comfortable. Breakout rooms will not be recorded. Because we have back-to-back sessions scheduled, this session will end promptly at its end time. We encourage presenters and/or participants to share contact information via chat to foster continued discussion and connection where desired. For your social media users, please use the hashtag ArtsChange25 if you feel inspired by something you hear or experience today. Thank you for joining us. And now I'm honored to welcome Hannah Bell, who is presenting Travail, the Disparities of Maternal Death Rates in the United States.
Thank you so much, Jessica. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you all for tuning in to my presentation. I'm just going to jump right in and get started. So like I said, my name is Hannah Bell. My pronouns are she, her. I am an artist based here in Rochester, New York. And the last year, I was an artist in residence at Comp Studios. And so during that residency, I completed this triptych painting titled Travail. And so I am going to just share my screen here and get into it. All right. So this presentation is, like I said, about this triptych painting, Travail, the Disparities of Maternal Death Rates in the United States. So Travail's definition is a work of painful or laborious nature. Is also a term for childbirth and labor. So the excruciating exertion of giving birth should result in a joyous outcome. However, for many, it does not. In the United States, Black women and childbearing people have a maternal mortality rate 3 to 4 times higher than white women and birthing people or other minority groups. This is one of the widest disparities in women's health. Here we see the set of 3 paintings. It features Kiana Cannon on the left, wearing yellow. She is an RN. She is alive and well, and she is the mother to 4 children. I know Kiana personally, and she graciously sent me her maternity photos, and is a beautiful representation of motherhood, pregnancy, strength, and bravery. The next figure is Dr. Shalon Irving. She passed away in 2017 from complications from giving birth to her daughter. Her friends and family started Dr. Shalon's Maternal Action Project, and that is how I came across her powerful story and legacy. This third and middle piece appears abstract, and we're going to get into the meaning of that later on in the presentation and how it ties these pieces together. So this body of work explores the disparities of maternal mortality rates for Black women and birthing people. And it also honors and celebrates their courage and strength as they face these disparities. This presentation will use these set of paintings to humanize and make more tangible the widespread issue by depicting these two women and their stories. So it's not just an issue that happens to numbers on a graph, but it's real people every day. So my goal in creating these paintings was for them to be a jumping off point to explore these disparities and humanize the widespread issue to the viewer. To start off, I'm just going to talk a little bit about the artistic process when I created these, kind of and looking at more an aesthetic, practical lens and how that ties into the deeper meaning of the pieces. A little bit about me and my artistic practice. I am a mainly portrait and figure artist. Like I said, I was an artist in residence last year at Comp Studios, which is facilitated through Rochester Contemporary Art Center. And that is where I completed this set of paintings. In my practice, I'm inspired by things like the power of faces and the stories that they represent, the depth of humankind and our experiences, and also bringing awareness to the people and their stories that matter. So to start, when creating these pieces, I created them pretty much at life-size scale, as you can see in this image with myself as comparison. So these women are the size that they are in real life in the paintings. So when viewing them in a gallery, you are looking at their faces as if you were looking at the person. You were making eye contact. It's as if they were there in the room with you. So the scale of these pieces was important to me because it creates a more real life experience to interact with them. And it sort of brings these women, their stories, and this issue more into our consciousness and into our space. Here I have little video snippets of some of my process. I know people love to see behind the scenes. And it shows you a bit of progress shots, some clips of my process. These paintings blended my love of portraiture and figurative work with my love of abstract painting. So I use these natural flowing shapes, floral motifs, natural colors to create these lush settings for the figures to reside in. Colors and textures evoke a fleshy and feminine sense, while petal and leaf shapes ground us in nature. And just a quick look at some of the details. It's always hard to present large scale paintings in a digital format. So just to give you a little bit of sense of some of the details of these works. This is Kiana Cannon, and this is Dr. Shalon Irving. So a major motif in these paintings and much of my work is my use of lines. Each woman has a bold line that interacts with her and her surroundings. And I use line work in a lot of my paintings because of its ability to evoke a broad range of things. In this work, things I was thinking about were lifelines, the string of fate, umbilical cords, destiny, and here's my cat. Um, Travel, connection, and just a few of those things I was thinking about when creating the line work in these pieces. Also, for each figure, there is a line that interacts with them personally. You can see how the line in Kiana's piece, again, she's the one on the left in yellow, traces down her backbone. Backbone being a term we often use to refer to someone who has bravery, strength, courage, perseverance. And in Dr. Shalon Irving's piece, the line travels from her halo, caresses her pregnant belly, travels up to pierce her heart, and return to her halo in an infinite loop. For me, this evokes love and loss, life and death, as well as the infinite cycle of birth and death, connection and loss. And between these women, a line emerges that travels through each of their stories and connects them both through this third piece, representative of our interconnectedness as women, as life givers, as humans. So that is just a little bit about the aesthetic side of things and my artistic process when creating these pieces, and how that interacts with the people and the stories that they represent. So Kiana Cannon is an RN. She is a nurse as an RN. That is what a nurse is. She is a mother and a United States Marine Corps veteran, and she knows firsthand the disparities faced by Black women receiving maternal health care. She is the mother of four, and each pregnancy has been high risk with complications of preeclampsia and cardiovascular issues. Um, Her children have needed stay in the NICU, and she has needed extended care in the hospital. Kiana, like so many Black women and childbearing people, face the inequity in health outcomes, and she bravely brings life into the world, despite the hardships she faces and the hardships Black women like her face. So this portrait is a celebration of that strength and courage that Black women have exemplified for generations. This painful and laborious effort of bringing a child into the world um, deserves our respect as they face the disparities of the maternal health outcomes in the United States. And it deserves our passion to fight to create a more equitable world and reduce those deaths. Dr. Shalon Irving, a quote from her is, "I see inequity wherever it exists. Call it by name and work to eliminate it." So Dr. Irving was an epidemiologist at the CDC. She researched the structural inequities that contributed to illness. On January 28th, 2017, so we are reaching actually the anniversary of her death, she passed away from complications of high blood pressure just 3 weeks after giving birth to her daughter, Soleil. Inspired by Dr. Shalon's passion for better health outcomes for the vulnerable, and by the heartbreak of her preventable death, her friends and family created the Dr. Shalon's Maternal Action Project. The mission of this project is to increase awareness of the Black maternal health crisis and to develop and promote community-based, action-driven strategies that improve reproductive health outcomes and recognize the human-centered value of Black birthing people and families. You can learn more about this project at drshalonsmap.org. I'm going to have that listed out later in the presentation. For the next section of the presentation, we're going to delve into the numbers and the statistics of this issue and get firsthand sense of what the disparity is and what the maternal death rates are for Black women and birthing people. So a maternal death is defined by the World Health Organization as the death of a woman while pregnant or within 42 days of the termination of pregnancy, irrespective of the duration or the site of the pregnancy, from any causes related to or aggravated by the pregnancy or its management, but not from accidental or incidental causes. So in 2020, there were 24 maternal deaths for every 100,000 live births in the United States. To give some context, how the US places on a more global scale, for example, the European Union in that same year had 8 deaths for every 100,000 live births. In 2021, the United States, there were 1,205 maternal deaths. So that's 33 deaths for every 100,000 live births. 326 of those were Black women and birthing people, which is about 30% of the total deaths. However, Black women and birthing people make up about 14% of the population who has the capacity for pregnancy. So this gives you a good look at just how these broad this disparity is, and how it is very much not reflective of the general population demographics. Black women and birthing people have a maternal death rate of 70 deaths for every 100,000 live births. And that's compared to 26 for white women and birthing people and 28 for Hispanic. Of course, we would want the death rate across the board to be as close to zero as possible. Every death is a tragedy, but we can really see how much more disadvantaged Black women and birthing people are. Here's a representation of those numbers. You can see Black women and birthing people make up more than half of the maternal deaths, when looked at of the deaths per 100,000 statistic. And like I said before, they are only 14% of the population that can have the capacity for pregnancy. So these numbers bring us back to the third piece in this series. Now with the context of these statistics, we can see how it's a visual representation of the disparity. There are 70 of these dark purple petals representing the Black women and birthing people, 28 pink for Hispanic, and 28 yellow petals for white. As a visual learner and experiencer myself, I needed to put these numbers in perspective to feel the weight that they represent. And depicted this way, we can really clearly see how much of a disparity there is. And I mourned for every petal that I painted. Now, of course, this is a big, broad issue, more than I can cover in one presentation. It's layered, it's complicated, and there are many causes. Of course, the overarching issues being white supremacy, racism, and misogynoir that has existed in our country for centuries. Complex reasons for the disparities include lack of access to insurance, delayed prenatal care, lack of research, higher rates of chronic conditions in Black women and birthing people, lower quality hospitals and healthcare access, and the prevailing biases, racial discrimination, and structural racism in healthcare towards people of color. So my hope with this is that these women and their stories give you a more personable and tangible sense of the prevailing issue in our nation. And with understanding the issue, we may be wondering what can be done. And there are a lot of organizations tackling this very issue. Like I mentioned before, Dr. Shallan's Maternal Action Project that was founded in her memory to carry on her legacy. Um, you can see it there, drshallansmap.org. I definitely would encourage you to check them out, donate if you're able to, and they offer a lot of services and bring awareness to this issue. Another organization working on research on this issue is the Center for Black Maternal Health and Reproduction, and that is at Tufts University. You can see the URL there. There are many networks for Black doulas that are doing really great work. I would encourage you to support and spread the word about. I listed some out here. And then for anyone who's local to Monroe County, I know we have some people who potentially may see this and are not local, but there is a page here for maternal health resources that has a really great list of what is available in Monroe County. And if that's not applicable to you personally, potentially you could share that out to someone who may be becoming pregnant, thinking about it. And there are also great agencies to support, volunteer, donate to make a difference locally here in Monroe County. Here's just my sources as we're finishing up. Again, I believe this video will be published sometime next week if you need to come back and look at these. If you are wanting to see any more of my work or connect with me, my main presence online is on Instagram at hannah.l.bell.art. Feel free to send me a message if you want to connect there. And I also have other work that looks into other systemic issues like police brutality, and Indigenous children in Canadian boarding schools, as well as other portraiture work. To conclude our my presentation, I want to leave us with this quote, again from Dr. Shalon Irving. I see inequity wherever it exists. Call it by name and work to eliminate it. Thank you all for listening. I've got some extra time, so I'm happy to take any questions and just open it up for discussion.
And it's incredibly powerful work. I remember the last time you presented also being astounded by, um, you know, fulfilling the definition of how arts can create change, because you're really bringing such awareness to this important issue that I think people, some people are aware of, but not in such a detailed way that's so humanizing. Like you're like sharing these personal stories. It's like really moving. And those those photos in the gallery of you, like I feel like you're, even if you don't have this talk, I'm sure you have an artist statement. I'm sure there's context for it so that people are really like being moved by this work. So thank you so much for sharing. It's not really a question, but I'm just
I appreciate that. Thank you.
I'm very moved by your work.
I have a question. Did Dr. Irving's family like request a copy of the painting, or it just probably memorializes her in a really beautiful, sentimental way, and I just wanted to know what conversations you had with them afterwards.
Yeah, I did send them the painting. I didn't hear back, but they do have it. So they do have the file. And yeah, I would love to connect with them more. I imagine they're pretty busy keeping her legacy alive. But I did send it to them, yes.
Any questions from anybody? In the chat, I did note when you were describing the process, that I thought it was really neat that you had pink as your kind of undertone color. I would not have thought of that. And could you just maybe explain why the color pink?
Yeah. Yeah. So a lot of these are in oil. So a lot of oil painters will start with like a toned canvas or an underpainting. And oftentimes it's more of like a burnt sienna or a burnt umber or brown tones. And for most of my paintings, that just doesn't really inspire me in the same way. So, I like bolder colors, more saturated chroma, and so I found to use magenta as the background piece. One just makes me more excited to like get going on it. Like I'm looking at pink, which I love. Um, and two, I think it brings this luminance and warmth to skin tones that I really like. Um, especially when depicting darker skin tones, I want to be really mindful of the hues and the depth of color and not have them washed out or grayed out. So I found that the magenta really works well for that and really sort of shines through in a warm tone. But I use that for most of the paintings I do on oil, whether or not they're figurative. I like to start with something fun. A good question, thank you.
Oh, there's another one in the chat. Says, I'm wondering what the medical field in general is doing to address this crisis. What can women, especially women of color in the medical field, do more to fight this?
Great. Yeah, I mean it is such a broad issue. It's so layered. Obviously, every health clinic and hospital is going to be fighting it differently. I mentioned the Black doula networks. Um, and doulas play a really important role of being that advocate for the birthing person. And so I would like to see that become more widespread. There used to be a Black doula network in Monroe County. Their website was down. I couldn't find current information on them. But I would say personally, like for nurses who are interested in this, is even just knowing, just taking a minute to question quick assumptions about Black women and birthing people and health outcomes and internal biases goes a long way. And then there are, like I said, Dr. Shallon's Maternal Action Project. They do speaking engagements and trainings. And so agencies or hospitals could contact agencies like that to get trainings for their staff so that this issue is front of mind because those biases can be so internalized that health practitioners may not fully understand the issue.
I'm curious, did you have or do you have relationships with these women, or like how did you choose them, and like how
Yeah,
they
so Kiana Cannon is my spouse's sister, so there's a familial relation there. Um, yeah, we know her, my nieces, we haven't, they live out of state, so we haven't met all her children, unfortunately. But that was a personal connection. And like I said, she graciously sent me her uh, maternity photos. And then Dr. Shalon, I never met personally, but was just really inspired by her story. And there, one of the links I put in the sources is a full article, quite in depth about her and her story and everything that happened. I definitely recommend to go back and read that if anyone wants more information on her. It's a really powerful piece.